And let's stay with this issue and speak to legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala. Kuzen, thank you so much for your time this evening. Some say, of course, looking at the sentence, it's no surprise that today the former president is released from the Correctional Services system, but others are saying there might be something untoward here. Others saying that he's receiving special treatment. What are your thoughts on this one?
Good evening, Manget, and also to your viewers. I do not think so. Just remember the Constitutional Court issued out a sentence and said former president must go to jail and spend a bit of time there. Once they've done that, they then handed over the former president to the Correctional Services Department, and the Correctional Services Act then took over. Now, at some point in time, that particular prescribed time had to come to an end, and today is definitely the end. So I do not think maybe there was any preferential treatment that was taken there. It is purely up to the internal processes of correctional services. And if there had been instances in which there was maybe favors that could have been done, there are always the courts that you can go back and run to. There's always a paper trail that you can always look at and say, why are you giving this particular individual special treatment? But when it comes to the granting of medical parole, there are processes that are there. And one of the things which is looked at is the length of the sentence that is there. But we must also be clear. The release of the former president today is not based on medical parole. It's based on the expiry of time, which was then given by the Constitutional Court at the time. So the 15 months has come and gone, and that's actually the end of the term. He was not sent to jail on a life sentence basis. There was a time in which this particular time was going to come to an end, and it has come to an end today.
So what does it then mean, though? Because I'm listening to you, and of course, one looks at the 15 months, it expires today. But of course, some of the Twitter analysts, as we call them, they're talking about how everything else is now moot. There is no other discussion that needs to be held around this particular matter, including the challenge of the granting of medical parole in and itself. How correct are they?
Not necessarily. Let's remember that the matter is on appeal, on the instance of the former president taking the matter on appeal. So the status quo, Mpumelelo has separated the two. Let's take it as of two. The instance is that it is taken as if the order was not issued, and as the term has ended, he is now considered a free man. However, because there are still those appeal procedures that are there, they can either go one or two ways. The first one, the court can then come back and say, we agree with the Gauteng High Court, you should go back to prison. The time that you've spent outside under medical parole should not be considered. Then you must start your sentence from scratch or continue where you left off before you were released on medical parole. Or the second option could be, then the court will then say, let us look at the difference between the two and let us look who has been non-compliant or did not comply with the rule of law as ought to have been followed. Former president, we are going to regard you as an innocent applicant that submitted an application to be released on medical parole. It is the person who was considering or ought to have considered your parole in an appropriate manner that has misbehaved or did not follow the proper procedure. So we're not going to punish you because you are the innocent applicant in this case. We're not going to punish you extra because if you look at it in the true definition of being detained, your freedom, or you were deprived of your freedom because you couldn't go anywhere without following proper procedures from correctional services. So we cannot say that you're a free man. So we are going to let you go, but we still want to punish the commissioner, Mr. Arthur Fraser in this case, for taking a decision that he ought not to have taken in the first place. So the matters in which are still on appeal are still going to be discussed. It adds to in favor of the former president when he argues, because he will then say, even if it is found that Mr. Fraser was wrong in taking a decision to release me on medical parole, think of me as an innocent individual, think of me as an innocent applicant. I can't be punished 3 times for the same crime that I've allegedly occurred. I've spent time in prison, I've spent time being deprived of my freedom, even though I was on medical parole. And if you send me to jail now, even after the term that was issued, the original source of me going to prison being done, meaning that's the end, then you're punishing me again for something that I again did not do or did not have the power to do at the time of the commission of the offense.
How strong would that argument be? As of course, you talk about him being an innocent party here and, putting that application through and thus up to the department to then handle this particular matter. How strong of an argument, though, could that be to persuade a judge to not then say, we are taking the former, which is what you said before, that we're saying go back to prison, instead of the latter of punishing the commissioner possibly, and not you, as you are seeing yourself as an innocent person here?
If the judges are going to look at this particular point and saying, what is in the interest of justice? Do you want to punish an innocent man for the injustices or the incompetence of another person? If the answer to that is no, then you ought to release him. So at the end of the day, you then look, what is fair in all this particular process? In order to investigate what is fair, you have to go back and take a step back and say, who is in the wrong here? Who exercised the power that they didn't have? Who did not apply their mind into in a certain matter? The mere fact that you have someone who is a recipient or that has benefited from that particular wrong decision does not necessarily mean that even the recipient must be punished at the end of the day. Especially if you look at the special circumstances of the recipient in this case of saying, was he really a free man when he was granted medical parole? The answer is no. And the reason, because he cannot go in any way in South Africa or even outside the country without complying with the rules and regulations prescribed by the Correctional Services Act or the department. So you cannot say that he was a free man. He was still incarcerated. It's just that the manner of incarcerating him was different. If the sole intention of the Constitutional Court was that we want to send him to jail, and it is part of his punishment that he must stay and remain there up until the 15-month term has come and gone, maybe then you can come back and say, let's look at the manner in which he received his punishment if it was prescribed in that manner. However, that's not the case when it comes to the manner in which sentences are administered in South Africa. Courts are there to issue out the administration of, or to issue out those particular orders in terms of the term in which you're going to serve in jail. However, the administrators of the jail term is the Correctional Services Department, guided by the Correctional Services Act. And within that act, there are provisions of being released on parole, serving your term in another form or manner, other than being sent to prison. So if it's an option which is available, then we cannot say that we need to punish the former president for the mistakes that were conducted by other individuals.
It'll be interesting to see how this one unfolds. But before I let you go, let's talk about Monday, where, of course, we are expecting that matter of private prosecution against journalist Karen Moore and advocate Billy Downer to start. How do you see that one unfold?
I think it will start with the preliminaries. You know that there is a matter which has been launched by the journalist Karen Moore, in which I think that's the first hurdle in which the former president will have to go through and his legal team, in terms of saying, is the matter properly placed between, or is she part of one of the co-accused, and was the prosecution or the non-prosecution certificate granted also including her? If the answer to that is yes, then she must go and face the music in a criminal court. I think that's one of the first bases in which the High Court in Pietermaritzburg will firstly have to deal with before they move on. However, if you look at the merits of the matter, especially in the case of Advocate Billy Downer, I think that the odds are a bit against him. He has been on under oath stating that, yes, I'm the one that released this particular information. And if you look at the NPA Act and the conduct in which all prosecutors have to conduct themselves in, it is very clear as to what type of information must be issued by whom at what particular point in time. However, that does not mean that whenever information is out there in the court file, it can't be utilized by anyone. The most important question in here is the technicality part of it. When was the information available in the court file? When was the information that issued out in the public? In this particular case, when did the journalist Karen Moore get hold of that information and be able to distribute it? If she got it a bit earlier, before it was even in the court file, yes, she might be an accomplice in the criminal proceedings. And the NPA Act is very clear. If you release information that you ought not to release, or in a manner in which you ought not to release it and you haven't been given permission to do so, you are indeed guilty of an offense and you should be punished accordingly.
All right, let's then look ahead at Monday and see how this one gets off. As you say that there might be that first hurdle. Let's see if they're able to then be able to overcome that. But let's leave it there with you for now. Thank you so much for your time. That's legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala.